You've seen the photos, the bride glowing in white, the groom smiling beside her, the perfect cake, the tearful vows. We call it the happiest day of your life. But what if I told you that almost everything we do at modern weddings, from the flowers to the veil to that moment when Dad walks you down the aisle, was born not from romance, but from fear, violence, and control? I've spent weeks diving into the actual history behind our most cherished wedding traditions, and let me be the first to warn you, you will never look at a wedding reception the same way again. Some of these origins are so dark, so disturbing, that you'll wonder how we ever turn them into party games. So grab your drink, maybe skip the wedding cake for now, and let's uncover the horrifying truth behind 5 wedding traditions you thought you knew. Let's start with one of the most anticipated moments of any wedding reception, the bouquet toss. You've seen it 100 times. The bride turns her back to a crowd of single women, counts to 3, and launches her flowers into the air while everyone scrambles like it's the last piece of pizza at a party. Today, it's all laughs and friendly competition. The woman who catches it is supposedly the next to get married. It's cute. It's harmless. It's a desperate survival tactic born from literal mob violence. Rewind to medieval England. The year's 1350, and you've just watched your friends get married in a small stone church. But as the couple emerges, something shifts in the crowd. The guests don't want to shake hands and offer congratulations. They want pieces of the bride, literally. Back then, people believed that anything that touched the bride on her wedding day was infused with magical good luck. Her dress, her flowers, even her hair. These weren't just accessories, they were talismans that could bring fortune, fertility, and protection from evil spirits. And the wedding guests, they were determined to get their share by any means necessary. Imagine being that bride. You've spent months preparing for this day. Your family has probably gone into debt for your dress. And now, as you try to leave the church, the crowd surges forward. Hands grab at your sleeves, fingers claw at your veil. Someone tears a strip from your skirt. Another person manages to rip off a button. You're being physically assaulted by people who are supposed to be your friends and family, all in the name of good luck. This wasn't rare. This was expected. Historical records described wedding guests becoming so frenzied that brides would be left in tatters, sometimes injured, always humiliated, standing in the churchyard with their dress literally falling apart. So, brides got clever. They started carrying an extra bouquet, not the precious flowers they'd be photographed with, but a decoy, a sacrifice. At the end of the ceremony, they would spot the crowd forming, feel the hands reaching, and instead of fighting back, they would throw the bouquet as hard as they could in one direction and run like hell in the other. The bouquet toss wasn't a celebration, it was a diversion tactic. It was the medieval equivalent of throwing a stake at a pack of wolves so you could escape with your life. And here's what really gets me. We kept the violence, but lost the context. We turned a survival mechanism into a sport. Today, we gather single women together, sometimes aggressively calling them out, sometimes making them wear embarrassing sashes and recreate that frenzy. We laugh as they elbow each other and die for flowers. We don't realize we're reenacting an assault. The modern twist? Now we tell women that catching these flowers means they're desperate to be next. We've taken a tradition about escaping violence and turned it into a commentary on women's relationship status. We've made the prize the very thing the original brides were trying to avoid, the attention of the mob. So next time you're at a wedding and the DJ calls all the single ladies to the floor, remember, you're not participating in a cute tradition. You're standing in for a medieval riot. And that bouquet, it's not just flowers. It's a centuries-old decoy, soaked in the fear of women who just wanted to get married without being torn apart. If you thought the bouquet toss was bad, let me introduce you to its creepy cousin, the garter toss. You know the scene. The groom disappears under the bride's dress while the crowd cheers. He emerges with a lacy band, twirls it on his finger, and fires it into a crowd of single men. Everyone laughs. It's fun. It's playful. It's also based on one of the most invasive wedding traditions in history, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it originally involved sexual assault and public humiliation. Let's go back to the Dark Ages, around the 5th to 15th centuries. Weddings weren't just celebrations, they were community events where the lines between public and private didn't exist the way they do now. And in this era, consummation wasn't private, it was proof. When a couple married, the wedding wasn't considered complete until the marriage was consummated. And in many communities, that consummation needed witnesses, not just one or two people. Whole groups of wedding guests would escort the couple to the bridal chamber. They would wait outside the door. Sometimes they wouldn't wait outside. Sometimes they would watch. The reasoning was twisted but logical for the time. If the marriage wasn't consummated, it could be annulled. There needed to be proof that the union was real, that the bride was delivered as promised. And the garter? That was the receipt. The groom would remove the bride's garter, sometimes while guests watched, sometimes in private, but then displayed immediately after, and present it to the crowd as evidence that the deed was done. The garter became proof of consummation, a trophy of the bride's lost virginity, passed around like a party favor. But it gets worse. Remember those rowdy guests from the bouquet story? They were back for the garter too. In some traditions, after the ceremony, guests would actually try to steal the bride's stockings. They believed that throwing these stockings at the couple's heads would bring good luck and fertility. So they'd chase the bride, grab at her legs, try to pull off her garters and stockings while she was still fully dressed in her wedding gown. To protect his new wife from this literal stripping, the groom started preemptively removing the garter himself and throwing it to the crowd. It was a distraction, yes, but also a surrender. Here, take this. Take this symbol of her virginity, this proof that I've claimed her, and leave us alone. The modern garter toss keeps all the creepiness but pretends it's consensual. We still have the groom going under the dress, still have the removal of an intimate garment, still have the throwing of that garment to a crowd. We've added teeth, sometimes literally, with grooms using their teeth to remove the garter, and music and photography. But we've never addressed the core violation. And let's talk about the symbolism we're keeping alive. The garter represents the bride's sexuality, specifically her virginity. The groom removes it publicly, displaying his conquest to his friends. Then he gives it away, literally throwing his wife's intimate clothing to other men. In what other context would this be acceptable? In what other scenario would we cheer as a man removes his partner's underwear and tosses it to his friends? Some historians argue the modern garter toss isn't even that old, that it was popularized by burlesque shows in the 1940s and 50s, where performers would fling garters to crowds of soldiers. So we've taken a tradition about sexual violence, lost a few hundred years of context, added a layer of strip club aesthetics, and called it wholesome family entertainment. If you're planning a wedding and considering this tradition, ask yourself, what exactly are we celebrating here? What message are we sending about consent, about privacy, about the bride's body as public property? Because the history is clear, even if we've tried to forget it. Now let's talk about one of the most visually stunning elements of any wedding, the veil. Whether it's a cathedral-length train or a simple birdcage net, the veil is pure romance. It adds mystery, drama, that big reveal when the groom lifts it to kiss his bride. It's feminine, it's elegant, it's a fire-colored shield designed to trick demons into thinking the bride is literally on fire. Welcome to ancient Rome, where wedding planning involved less Pinterest and more exorcism. The Romans were absolutely terrified of evil spirits, not skeptical, not casually superstitious, genuinely, existentially afraid that malevolent supernatural beings were constantly trying to ruin their lives. And weddings? Weddings were like a beacon for these spirits. Happy events attracted unhappy entities. Joy drew jealousy. The bride, in her happiness and beauty, was essentially walking around with a target on her back. So the Romans developed the flammeum, a veil that was literally flame-colored, usually red or deep orange. It wasn't decorative, it was apotropaic, meaning it was designed to ward off evil. The bride would be covered from head to toe, completely engulfed in this red shroud. The idea was that she would look like she was on fire, and evil spirits, presumably not wanting to get burned, would stay away. But the veil served another, darker purpose. It was heavy, really heavy, multiple layers of fabric designed to weigh the bride down to make it physically difficult for her to run. Why would a bride need to be prevented from running? 2 reasons, both disturbing. First, arranged marriages were the norm, not the exception. The bride might be meeting her groom at the altar. The veil ensured she couldn't see him until the last possible moment, preventing her from bolting at the sight of him. Second, even in love matches, cold feet were a real concern. The veil was insurance against the bride changing her mind. There's even a theory that the Roman veil was designed to match the bride's height so it could be reused as her burial shroud. That's right, the same fabric that covered her on her wedding day would cover her in death. The Romans weren't subtle about their symbolism. Marriage was a kind of death, the end of one life and the beginning of another, and the veil marked that transition. As centuries passed, the veil's color changed from red to white. Its meaning shifted from spiritual protection to symbolizing purity and modesty. But the core function remained: hide the bride, control her visibility, manage her movement. In medieval times, the veil became a tool against the evil eye, the belief that jealousy could literally curse a marriage. The bride had to be hidden, not just from spirits, but from other people, anyone who might look at her with jealousy and accidentally ruin her future. Even the lifting of the veil, that romantic moment we all wait for, has dark roots. In arranged marriages, it was the moment of truth. The groom was finally seeing what he'd purchased. In some traditions, it was the moment the marriage was sealed. The veil came up, the kiss happened, and the deal was done. The bride had no more chances to escape. Today, we call the veil timeless and classic. We don't mention that timelessness includes centuries of women being treated as property to be hidden, weighed down, and revealed only when the transaction was complete. We don't talk about the fire that was meant to scare away demons or the weight that was meant to prevent flight. When you see a bride in a veil, you're seeing a ghost story. You're seeing the echoes of women who were told that their happiness was dangerous, that their beauty needed to be concealed, that their consent was less important than the completion of the contract. The veil isn't just fabric. It's centuries of fear, sewn together and called tradition. Let's move to the symbol that represents marriage itself, the rings. 2 golden circles, no beginning and no end, representing eternal love. The 4th finger of the left hand connected directly to the heart by the vena amoris, the vein of love. It's poetic, it's scientific, well, pseudo-scientific, and it's completely made up. The ancient Egyptians did believe that circles represented eternity, and they did wear rings. But when we talk about wedding rings as we know them, we're talking about the Romans. And the Romans weren't interested in poetry. They were interested in property law. In ancient Rome, rings were legal documents you wore on your hand. When a woman accepted a ring from a man, she wasn't accepting a proposal. She was accepting a contract. The ring signified that she had been transferred from her father's ownership to her husband's. It was a collar you chose to wear, a brand that said "taken" in a language everyone understood. The materials mattered. Iron rings were worn at home, practical and strong, representing the binding nature of the agreement. Gold rings were worn in public, flashy declarations of wealth and status. The ring wasn't about love. It was about announcing to society that this woman now belonged to someone, that she was under new management. The vein of love thing, that was a convenient myth that came later, a way to romanticize a legal transaction. There is no vein that runs directly from your ring finger to your heart. Anatomically, it's nonsense. But it sounded good, and it helped sell the idea that marriage was about romance rather than ownership.
engagement rings have an even more specific and recent dark origin. In 1477, Archduke Maximilian of Austria wanted to marry Mary of Burgundy. Mary was the most eligible bachelorette in Europe, rich, powerful, and independent. Maximilian needed to seal the deal before someone else did, so he commissioned a diamond engagement ring, the first recorded diamond engagement ring in history, shaped in an M for Mary. This wasn't a romantic gesture, it was a strategic move in a political merger, and it worked. Mary said yes, the diamonds dazzled the courts of Europe, and suddenly every nobleman needed to give his fiancée a diamond to prove he was serious. The tradition spread downward through the classes, fueled not by love, but by competition and conspicuous consumption. By the Victorian era, rings had become increasingly elaborate, covered in diamonds and gemstones, each one trying to outdo the last. The message was clear. The value of the ring equaled the value of the woman. A bigger diamond meant a more desirable bride. The ring became a measure of worth, a price tag worn on the finger. Even the double ring ceremony, where both partners exchange rings, is relatively modern. For most of history, only the woman wore a ring. Why would the man need one? He wasn't the one being claimed. He wasn't the property. The tradition of men wearing wedding rings only became common during World War II, when soldiers wanted a reminder of their wives back home, and, let's be honest, a signal to other women that they were taken. Today, we spend thousands of dollars on rings. We insure them, we upgrade them, we panic if we lose them. We've built an entire industry around the idea that love should be measured in carats. And we do all this while wearing a symbol that for most of history meant I am owned. The next time you see a diamond commercial with soft lighting and romantic music, remember what you're really looking at. A legacy of women as property, of marriage as a transaction, of love as something that needs a legal marker and a public brand. The circle might be endless, but its meaning has changed. Whether it's changed enough is up to you.
We've reached the final tradition, and I've saved the most deceptively dark for last. It's the wedding cake smash, that moment when the newly married couple cuts the cake and instead of feeding each other politely, smears frosting all over each other's faces. It's funny, it's spontaneous, it's a ritual of male dominance dating back to ancient Rome that involved breaking bread over a woman's head to symbolize her submission. I told you we were ending dark. In ancient Rome, wedding cakes weren't the tiered, frosted confections we know today. They were loaves of barley bread, unsweetened and dense. And at the end of the wedding celebration, the groom would take this bread and break it over the bride's head. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't playful. It was a symbolic act of violence, representing the groom's breaking of the bride's virginal state, his dominance over her body, and her submission to his control. The bread breaking was a public declaration. I have conquered this woman. She is mine to handle as I please. The crumbs that fell were then scrambled for by the guests, who believed they brought good luck and fertility. So not only was the bride assaulted with bread, but she was then surrounded by people trying to grab the pieces that fell from her head. It was a frenzy, a feeding frenzy, with the bride at the center. This tradition evolved over centuries. In medieval England, it became a game where guests would stack small cakes and the couple would try to kiss over them without knocking them down. Success meant a prosperous marriage. In Yorkshire, brides would throw cake over their heads to symbolize leaving behind the temptation of desire, because apparently once you're married, you're not supposed to want things anymore. But the core violence remained. The cake was always about the bride's body, always about fertility, always about the groom's power over her. And in the 20th century, we brought back the smash with a vengeance. The modern cake smash is fascinating because it's one of the few traditions where the violence is mutual. The bride gets to smash cake on the groom too. It's equality, right? We've taken a sexist tradition and made it fair. But have we? Or have we just made it acceptable for both partners to engage in a ritual that still symbolizes at its core the messy, violent, public nature of claiming another person? We're still breaking something over each other's heads. We're still making a mess of each other in front of a crowd. We've kept the spectacle and called it love.
And here's what really bothers me: the pressure. If you don't do the cake smash, you're boring. If you do it gently, you're not committed. There's an expectation that this moment should be wild, should be funny, should make for a great photo. We've turned a symbol of male dominance into a social media performance, and we judge couples based on how well they play their parts. Some couples are opting out, choosing to feed each other gently or skip the cake cutting entirely. But for most, the smash remains. It's tradition. It's expected. And like all the traditions we've talked about today, we've forgotten why we started doing it in the first place. So, here we are. 5 traditions, 5 horrifying origins. The bouquet that was a survival tool, the garter that was proof of consummation, the veil that was a demon shield and a weight to prevent escape, the ring that was a brand of ownership, the cake smash that was a declaration of dominance. What do we do with this information? Do we cancel weddings? Do we strip every tradition away until we're standing in blank rooms in street clothes, exchanging vows with no symbols at all? I don't think so. I think we get to choose. We get to look at these traditions, understand where they came from, and decide if they still mean what we want them to mean. We can toss bouquets because we want to share joy, not because we're afraid of being torn apart. We can wear veils because they're beautiful, not because we need protection from evil spirits. We can exchange rings as equals, both wearing them, both choosing them, both meaning it. The power of tradition isn't in its history, it's in our intention. And now that you know the history, your intention can be informed. You can keep what serves you and leave behind what doesn't. You can create new traditions that reflect who you are, not who you were told to be. Weddings are supposed to be about love, real love, equal love, chosen love. And now, knowing what these symbols used to represent, you have the power to make them represent something better. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more insightful videos like this.